welcome. My name is Mike Tomasco. I work at Pfizer. And I feel like I'm here from the future. I'm going to take you on a 10-year journey, very similar to the Pathfinder experience or the Mars exploration experience we heard this morning. My 10 years is a little bit different. I don't think we're going to have quite the same outcome, but you can be the judge of that at the end and see if I took you on that journey. But I say I'm here from the future in the sense that what I'm hearing in the presentations this morning from some of the keynote speakers is very relevant to what I'm about to show you. We've been working on this journey for quite some time, and it's taking us down a really exciting path. I'm glad to be here. I thank you for inviting me, and let's get moving. So all Pfizer presentations, I have to have a disclaimer. What I say here is something that we're sharing. It's directional in nature. No commitments will be made as we're talking about it. So Pfizer, what is Pfizer? Pfizer is a preeminent biopharmaceutical company, and our main goal is to use innovation to drive the therapies we bring to market to make the world a healthier place. That is the core of what we do. There's a picture of some brands here. You probably are all familiar with the consumer products. One or all of you have probably taken one of our products throughout your lifetime, or your families or children. And it's an exciting place to be. When I get up every day and I go to work, I think about what I'm doing to contribute to the success of this company. And I relate it back, and I always try to inspire my team through my own stories. I relate it back to things that go on in my life. And we have a family member with Alzheimer's disease. So it's really important in my own life to contribute to a company that might make a difference as we walk down this path. With some exciting things that might happen in the future. So the Infor EAM journey at Pfizer, what is this all about? Sorry I used small font. They told us not to, but I did because I wanted to fit it all in on one slide. It's important. There's a picture on the next slide. So in 2003, we had a challenge in front of us. We had just come off of Pfizer's acquisition of both Warner Lambert and Pharmacia. At this point in time, we had 100+ manufacturing plants and facilities all over the world. There are 200+ systems running maintenance management and calibration and various other activities across this network. Tens of thousands of localized SOPs in local languages and those standard processes. And it's an extremely heavily regulated industry. Huge challenge for us, trying to figure out the main question here: how do we run maintenance as a business? It was a reflection point. It was really a time to look at our operations and say, we can do better than we are today. There's a huge opportunity to move towards what would be called a common core capability. So it was really the Pfizer engineering business and their IT counterparts, which we call business technology. So we're integrated with the business. Coming up with a strategy to create this core capability for Pfizer. And part of that was also the creation of a value proposition or business case for why we would go after this. And the original value proposition was created for about 45 of the plants to get a main footprint out there in the marketplace, and then you'll see how things changed over time. We spent about a year standardizing the business processes and in parallel justifying the investment. So we had an ability to have 100 people from all parts of the organization all over the world collaborate on the different business process areas to help us define how we're going to operate moving forward. So what came out of that was a standardized set of processes that we then needed to pick a solution for. We ended up deciding to go with the Infor EAM product, which back then was a data stream product, and we grew from there. In 2005, we had our first site go live. It was a long, long process. It was very complex and error-prone as we were going through it, and we learned a lot. And then we had to replicate over and over. You'll see on the next slide. In 2008, we had the opportunity to harmonize with our global operations and research portions of our business. They had a decision point to make on whether they were going to buy their own solution or leverage one that existed. And through another year's worth of harmonization of process, we were able to include them in their operations, which were quite distinct, into what we were trying to accomplish with what we called at the time, the PGEMS or EAMS or EAMS, 3 different names for the program, Global Core Solution. In 2009, another wild card, Pfizer decided to buy Wyeth. Huge change for us. We were just getting to the point where we were about finished deploying to the 45. At that point, I think we had increased it to about 60 plants and facilities with the global operations harmonization. Thought we were done and we could then focus on the product and improving that for the customers. 28 new plants and facilities out at the scope. And by the way, there was a deadline on getting that done. We had to finish by the end of October 2012. It was a big day for us. And we did. So here we are today, at least when I created the presentation a couple weeks back. We have done to date over this 10 years over 100 deployments of this system. So one core set of business processes, one standard configuration for the company to operate off of, in many, many data migrations to get everybody there from multiple systems. Along that path, we have either divested, sold, closed various operations over the years, and we've also come up with a way to facilitate those transactions. And we're currently live at 76 manufacturing facilities or research facilities, office buildings as well, managing 1.3 million individual assets, 905,000 MRO spare parts, and I think 150,000 of those are actually duct tape. But just to call back to an earlier conversation we were having. And there's 12,000 end users of the system that rely on this system to do their daily job. So if it does not function or work properly, I hear about it constantly. What's exciting about some of this stuff, I'll go to the next slide, is the improvements we made over time in how we went about going through the deployment. So this top set of bubbles represents different countries where we have one plant or more plants or facilities. And you can see, as we went from left to right here, by the time we got to the Wyeth acquisition, there's another acquisition in there with King Pharmaceuticals. We had to really figure out how to do these things in parallel. At one point, I had 12 parallel deployments going on, each one of those pulling data out of 2 different systems. So 24 data extracts, 24 conversion programs, and then 12 go-lives, all within a 2-month period of each other. It was exciting. It was pretty crazy. It was fun. In the previous discussion, we talked about celebrating a lot. We celebrated a little bit, not as much as we should have. I wish I worked at the nuclear power plant for the celebrations. But I wrote down some of the ideas from that session to bring back to some of the things that we do to celebrate. These are our program names. So this little split here is when we convert it from what was originally the engineering system into the global standard of enterprise asset management. And the S for us stands for solutions. You'll see on the technology slide why that's the case. We introduced mobile technology, and I'll say we introduced it twice. We went with one provider in this time frame, and after going through that process and looking at what it offered for us, we consolidated it onto the Infor product to make it more in tune with our business processes. And then we introduced a data warehouse. That is a continuous evolution of capabilities, reports, and dashboards. It's quite fascinating for driving the business operations. So if I am a site maintenance leader, or if I am the site leader or a corporate function person, I can go in there and see metrics relevant to what I want to see in the performance of my business. So that was our original goal, was how do I run maintenance as a business? Putting in standard processes, number one, and enabling technology or set of technologies, number two, and then being able to get the data out, number three. The most fascinating thing on this slide, besides the amount of deployment work, which was constant, was the change in technologies along the way. We didn't stay stagnant. We're in the pharma industry, heavily regulated, and we had quite a few issues in the beginning with going through our testing processes and cycles and learning how to adapt to changing technologies. Usually in pharma, you put something in and you ride it out for a very long time. Right around where this break came, our global quality and compliance groups came up with a new risk-based methodology for us to use when we're developing and rolling out systems. And we volunteered to go first and pilot that process. We had the opportunity to jump from basically this forms environment onto another version of the product. And instead of going through just a standard typical upgrade cycle that we're going to, we used all that effort to change platforms, which changed the technology stack of the product. That enabled us to then just keep up with releases. So our version of keeping up with releases is, if Infor releases a product December of this year, it might take me 9 months or so to get through our cycle, but that's 9 months faster than previous. So we're trying to keep relatively up with the technology. We work in a partnership mode with Infor in terms of developing the capabilities. We'll take a look at the next slide. This is the current solution footprint without any of the data historians in the picture. I'll talk about that in a second. So at the top, you've got our fundamental processes: maintenance, calibration, MRO, inventory management. Apologize for the font size. I can see some squinting. I'll read them to you up there. And then those are all supported by procure to pay and record to report. Standardized processes globally. I can tell you firsthand that changing the finance processes at individual plants all over the world as you're rolling out this system was a fun job, and it took a lot of change management effort and communication to get everybody working the same way. Things were treated differently in different countries in terms of accounting, and we had to work through those processes to work towards what we called a global standard for how we're going to operate. So if I pull up an MRO report in China or the UK or the US or Puerto Rico or anywhere else, it's all the same. It's apples to apples. In the middle, what we call EAMS, that's our solution set. Most of the components are out-of-the-box Infor capabilities that we've configured to suit our business needs and business processes. One of the key components being the asset sustainability edition or version of the product. It might have a new name now, but we can talk about that in the breakout. Kevin can lead us through that. Their mobile solution, barcoding. We have our own Cognos data warehouse that was separate because of when we implemented it in time. And then we have some other integrations with Microsoft Project for scheduling. The Infor iProcure system, which we use not for P2P, we use it in a different way, internally to Pfizer for people to punch out the catalogs, pull back, and then go through our standard P2P processes. We have 13 to 15 integrations for each one of these stacks here. We have 3 different finance systems right now, depending upon where you are in the world and what we're integrated with. 3 different versions of the Ariba procurement system linked to those finance systems. I had my team pull some stats today. We do 800,000 interface transactions a year, which is pretty substantial. The error rate on those right now is 0.001%, but believe it or not, still quite a big number, which is, you always want to make that better. Because when the tickets come in, it's always something that's very important to the person that's missing whatever they have. Some of the other interesting things down here is integrated supply capability. We have a provider that manages some of our stockroom capability, and we also order some of the, well, all of our spare parts from in certain regions. And instead of working through the procurement process here, we have developed a method to work under master agreements and directly go from the EAMS solution right to that supplier systems to chip away at our demand for their products. And that has sped up lead times, that's improved accuracy, and for me personally in IT, it's reduced interface error transactions. So the more we migrate towards those direct relationships and have things within our support control, the less we have to worry about process-related issues. It's not usually data, it's usually process and somebody changing something they shouldn't have downstream. On the other side of the house, in the facilities management space, our real estate groups use the Tririga Real Estate Management System space planning, and our global operations research sites, where that is deployed, integrate into our EAMS solution for maintenance management. So there's a work request interface from this Tririga system into the standard work processes we created for EAM. And of course a feedback loop going the other way. Some of these other interesting things, ESP, we call it Extended Stockroom Pick List. We custom developed something that originally sat over in the procurement system but didn't make sense. And as we were harmonizing processes, it needed a home. So our research scientists, they can request commonly stocked items, beakers and some chemicals that are stocked in stockrooms. So it's different than the maintenance business, but it's one of my customers. We just created a simple web interface right into the system They can see what's commonly stocked, create a pick list. It's given to the stockroom attendants, and they can pack it up and deliver it within the 2-hour SLA that they had for that operation. So they have to get it to the scientists in 2 hours. When we were going through the Ariba system, through no fault of its own, we just didn't have interfaces scheduled that frequently to enable that process. So necessity became the mother of invention on that slide. Okay, lots of words. This is where we're going. So this is the exciting stuff. I didn't have the historians and things we're integrated to on the other slide. It would have gotten a little bit too crazy. But this top bit of stuff here, over the last year, we started to integrate data historians into our asset management solution to pull in the data and the tags to help manage maintenance. The easy ones are the meter readings. That's easy. You can change your PM strategy and you can immediately save money wherever that's relevant. The harder ones are the conditions. And we've come up with a library of conditions and calculations, differential pressure for filters, and other things we're tracking with harmonic distortion related to energy consumption to drive changes in behavior and efficiencies that we didn't have before. That's probably the most exciting part of the whole slide, is understanding where we're going. That's the future I was hearing about this morning in some of the discussions, was trying to make that happen. And I think a lot of you in the room could probably look at what you have today and probably make it happen with your current partners and what you're working with. Some of the other things we're looking at, a long-term goal potentially to get into this Infor EPM solution, which is around energy management. So there's some basic capabilities within this module that we have today around energy, but we have a broader need, and we had an existing provider that we work with, JCI, in their Panoptic solution to do what we need. So we have a long-term discussion going on around where we migrate with these things. So when I talked about how it takes me 9 months to work on a release with my team, once Infor releases something, we plan out 3 years so we understand how long we have to work backwards from that 9 months to make that a reality. Some of the things that are really exciting for us, system performance-wise, 12,000 people using this thing. We've been asking for this, and Infor has been obviously working on it. I saw it this morning. It's pretty cool. HTML5 version of the system, so a system upgrade. So it's OS independent and browser independent, and you can use it on the iPad, and there's an iPad application that we've been wanting for a long time. We threatened to make our own, and we decided that wasn't a good use of our money because I didn't have anybody who programmed Objective-C++. So that stuff is starting to look great. When it's released, or it is released, we'll be looking at that over a period of time, and we usually pilot something first at some 3 or 4 of our really key high-performing sites, and then figure out how to replicate it. Something I didn't talk about before was reliability. So this is exciting. A few years ago, we were going down the path of purchasing another software, no offense to other software makers, to take all the data and transactions out of our EAMS system so they could be analyzed and we could run reliability statistics on them. But we don't have to do that now because the first phase of this is being released, and we'll go live with this at the end of April. But it's a reliability analytics module, so Weibull analysis, CRO-AMSA, getting you into that mode of, I call it democratizing the math. So you get the math done for people. You don't need Six Sigma black belts to do the calculations to figure out where the failure modes are going to be and what's going to happen. You do the math for them, and then you end up just having to teach them how to interpret the results and take action. That's exciting. That's a place we need to go to drive real performance. And we're removing the barrier to entry, which is we don't have enough people that can do the math because there's so much data to crunch through. It's just done for you every night. Paperless stuff. Talked about iPads before. We're also linked into some lab systems, LIMS systems, and there's a lot of electronic lab notebook activity going on currently at Pfizer. And we're building interfaces to link with them so that they don't have to print out paper or go to other systems to look at the calibration status of their equipment. It's pretty exciting. And we do try to maintain at the bottom here 30 to 40% of the customer requests that come in. So I have a slide that talks about governance and the enhancement process to just close this out. Our governance process, we started a few years ago out of a need. As we got so big, we needed to have more control over what we planned on doing and where we planned on going. So setting initial strategies, down to driving the execution of development and rollout of a product to this large user base required some attention. You can see we have a big mix of skill sets involved on the governance team. So I sit on this team along with a peer set across engineering and a site representative. So we've got reliability and operations people. I've got an emerging market leader, someone responsible for the EAMS solution in engineering, and our global engineering VP is really our sponsor. But all the magic happens down here. Because without the stuff going on down here with the detailed teams and the plant members, we don't have anything to really look at or make decisions upon or decide where to go. So the stage one governance is really where everything gets vetted. Information comes in, and I'll show it on the next slide how that works. And then these communities of practice that we have monthly meetings where we're going through training, enhancements, product direction, and soliciting ideas for how to get this solution out further to really help people do better in their daily job. We have a huge traction with this with participants from all over the world every month, and we're training and driving behaviors there that's also driving down our support volume. So when we see common root cause issues come in through support, information or know-how kind of questions, or even technical issues that might be caused by data, we can use that information to drive what we put in the first 15 minutes of these sessions every month to drive down that volume and get it out there. In terms of the enhancement process, as I was talking about, all these global user teams, they have different routes to get it in, but ultimately it's consolidated onto an enhancement list. It's a SharePoint form. It's very simple to use. You just fill out a couple fields. You can always see what status it's in because we go back and tell people where things are in the pipeline, whether we're planning it for a future product release when we collaborate with Infor on where they're going, or whether we plan on customizing or building something ourselves. And then what we do behind the scenes before anything gets to governance is we have to decide what's the effort to do this, what value does it bring, how complex is it, and we give it a composite rating, and then based upon where it sits in that matrix, things either get discussed at governance because it's an important, high value, high complex thing to do, or we just do them, or we just flat out reject them. And as we got this process out there and got people using it, some of the sites that may have been a change management issue for us during an initial deployment, and they go through that valley of despair, as you call it, in productivity, when they start coming up out of that and we get them more engaged in these communities, they become the biggest submitters of new ideas and innovations that would make the system perform better for everybody. And that's what's really key about this group of people and how they work. It's that global participation, and everyone has a voice in the process that really makes a difference to how we operate. So with that, thank you.